Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast. I'm your host, Jace. Crowdfunding spotlight today. Welcoming back a creator who's been on several times before, somebody I consider a friend. My pleasure to have Marz back on the show. Ron, thanks for taking the time.
Of course, Jace. It is most excellent to see you again.
Yeah, it's always great to see you. Ron is a huge baseball fan. Go Mets if you're a Mets fan, much like Dan Didio, who we had on not too long ago. And it's kind of a funny story. So we're here today to talk about Shinku, which is a campaign that is live as not as we're recording this, but when I release this, it will be live on Zoop. Link in the show notes to go and check it out. But when I read Shinku, I remember I had read it before, and it's sort of tangentially involved in my love of baseball and Ron's love of baseball. So I'm going to tell the story in just a moment. But first, let's give Ron a chance to give the elevator pitch. Let all the readers know what Shinku is about.
Shinku is a contemporary vampire hunting samurai story, starring of someone who's named Shinku, or is at least called Shinku. We don't know if that's actually her name or not, but that's simply what she goes by. Um, and it was an Image Comics series by myself and Lee Moder, along with Matthew Waite inking and Michael Attia coloring and Troy Petrie on letters. And we did 5 issues, did a trade paperback, and then didn't get back to it. But in the meantime, Lee had produced an issue and a half or so, issue and a little bit more of additional work, plus a bunch of covers and sketches and ideas. And unfortunately, as maybe some of the listeners know, Lee Moder passed away a couple years ago. So this stuff has been sitting in a flat file and then sitting in my office for the last few years. And I decided we needed to get the rest of it out there.
Yeah, and it's such a fun story, everybody. If you love just all-out action, if you love samurai, you love vampires, or just love comics, it's something you should definitely check out. But I mentioned it being kind of related to kind of our relationship and our love of baseball. So a few years ago for the day job, I was in New York. I had spent a week in Florida doing a bunch of stuff for work, and then the following week I needed to be in New York City, and I didn't want to fly back to Arizona in between, so I just spent the weekend in New York as the first chance I ever got to go to Citi Field. And it just so happened that the day I went was a promotion where they were giving away this Pete Alonso bobblehead. And I was like, I don't have room in my luggage. I'm not a Mets fan, and so I just kind of walked past. He tried to give it to me. I'm like, no, I don't. And then I was like, hold on, I bet I know somebody that might want that. I bet Marz would love to have this bobblehead. So I went ahead and grabbed it, and then I sent Ron a message, and I was like, hey, I'm at the Mets game. I got this Pete Alonso bobblehead. Can I send it to you? Because again, I didn't have room in my luggage. Not a Mets fan. And Ron's like, oh, I would love that. That's great. Gave me the address. I shipped it off to him. Now, I expected nothing in return, but Ron, being the gentleman that he is, sent me this wonderful care package. And one of the books that was in there was Shinku. And I had never heard as big of a fan as I am of your work, Ron. This one flew under my radar. I wasn't aware of Shinku. And so obviously I got the care package. I was like, oh, what is this? I read it. I loved it. Issue 5 doesn't end, I would say, on a cliffhanger, but the story is not finished. And so when I heard about this project and the fact that, obviously I know Lee had passed away, unfortunately, but the fact that we're getting material that we haven't seen before, and it's material from Lee, I think is something really special. And so I'm really glad you're getting the chance to do that. So from that perspective, this has to be a very personal project for you. It has to mean a lot to get this last work of Lee's out here, because obviously he was a colleague and a friend.
Yeah, I mean, he was Uncle Lee to my kids when he would come and visit. And he visited, on a fairly regular basis. He would come to the local comic book show and come hang out for a few days, and we would see each other at other shows. So he was just, he was a really close friend. And we had worked on, in addition to Shinku, we had worked on a bunch of different stuff, Dragon Prince at Top Cow and some DC stuff, and a lot of odds and ends. And he was like my go-to guy when I had a creator-owned idea. I'm like, hey, do you want to draw this? And he almost invariably said yes. Um, and the work was just amazing every time. There's so much life to the pencils. There's so much bounce to the pencils. Um, there was nothing he couldn't draw uh, and pull off in an amazing fashion. Just one of the most naturally gifted artists. I mean, Lee, of course, would not cop to that. He
Right.
just thought, oh, I just draw stuff, and he's exceedingly humble. Um, so, um, this is as you said, this is very close and very personal to me, and um, certainly when Lee passed away at sort of the end of the pandemic, it was a shock, and he had um, he had fallen out of touch during the pandemic. I couldn't really raise him on social media or email or text or anything. He had just sort of gone into gone into seclusion really thanks to the pandemic and never came back out of it. So when I got the call that he had passed away, I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised. Um, but knowing Lee, I mean, we had all of this material. His friends, Anthony Rutgeiser, who's also a writer, principally, and his other friend Todd, said, "Look, obviously there's flat files full of material, um, and we'll send you what's yours." So they sent me all of the Shinku artwork, the few pages. He had sold a few pages here and there, but mostly it just sat in a drawer. Sent me all of the Dragon Prince artwork, and a bunch of other stuff that we had worked on together. And then it sat here in my office for a year and a half. Um, I guess mostly because I didn't want to deal with it. I
Yeah,
didn't want to,
fair.
you know, dealing with what do I do with Lee's artwork is sort of you're embracing, oh, he's gone and he's not coming back and I'm never going to see my friend again. Um, so eventually I came to the conclusion that the stuff that hadn't been seen, which is 30 or 40 pages of Shinku material that were going to be issues 6 and 7, plus another 10 covers and pinups and some sketches needed to be. I felt like it needed to be put out in the world so that it didn't just disappear,
Right.
so that his legacy um, would be seen. And So this project is really about pulling all of it together and making it the sort of the complete Lee Motor Shinku, with everything that I have access to, um, all of the previous issues, in addition to the stuff that we have on hand that hasn't been published before. And so it's not a complete story. And I wrestled with that for a while. Well, so should somebody else come in and finish it? Should I write a prose story that finishes up the at least the first storyline? And then I came to the conclusion that, well, let's include everything that we have and let it be as it is. Let it let it just stop. Uh, and that feels to me like the right decision. I don't know if it is the right decision, but that's the one that feels the best to me because I want this to be Lee's book. And so we're getting it out through Zoop. It'll be everything everything Shinku wise that Lee drew that we still have access to. There might be a stray piece here or there that the original is gone and we don't have a digital file of it. But this is everything, and it's just some gorgeous work. And whenever Lee and I would talk about Shinku, he always said "our girl." So we're getting the rest of our girl story out there.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I mean, there's plenty of stories over the years that haven't necessarily been finished, and we as fans and readers can kind of extrapolate an ending on our own. And I didn't know that we'd ever get any. When I read the trade paperback when you sent it to me, so I think it's fine. I mean, it's so infused with style. That's the thing that I kept coming back to because like I said, I read it when you sent it to me, and then when I knew I was going to get a chance to have you on to talk about this, I was like, oh, let me go back and revisit that because I know I enjoyed it. It's just so fun. But the thing that struck me the second time reading it, knowing Lee was gone, I was kind of, how does this artwork make me feel? What is it? What's the word that comes to mind? And the word that kept coming to mind was just he infused it with such style, right? I mean, we love samurai, we love action, like John Woo action movies, we love, great vampires and wonderful comic book action. But the style that he infused it with, it leaps off the page. Most of the book is set at night. It just it it's his art. Like if you're not familiar with his artwork, everybody, I think Shinku is a perfect example of his sort of artistic style. But it is that infusion of style that he gave it that really brought these characters in this world to life. So I kind of agree with you. I don't think I'd want to see somebody else come in and finish it. I just let it be what it is, the work of you and Lee and what that collaboration was like.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm. Uh, I would like to tell the rest of the story. The initial idea was that we were going to do issues 6 through 10 and bring the story's next chapter to a sense of conclusion, if not completion.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we do another 5 issues and just do them in batches like that. Obviously, that's not going to happen. That's not ever going to finish the way we wanted it to finish. I'm not closing the door on maybe doing a few more stories with Shinku, but for now, this is what we have, and I think it's an appropriate send off to Lee's work, at least on this series, that we're going to give you everything that he did. Hopefully, we'll have room in the book for some pencil work and an additional sketchbook beyond the one that's just in the trade paperback. There will be some pinups that are by other artists. We had a section of pinups in the first trade paperback, and there are some more pieces. So, it's going to be all of the Lee Motor stuff that is in existence, plus some other pieces by people who Lee knew or were admirers of his work. So this is going to be pretty complete as far as maybe what it'll ever be, but at least for now, this is the book, and so we're going to do it as an oversized hardcover and make it as much of an art book as possible.
Now, what are some of the other? Again, everybody, as we're recording this, the campaign's not live, so you may not have finalized anything wrong. But what are some of the other options? Obviously, you can get the hardcover book. Any chance for like original art? Are you going to do any prints? That sort of thing. What other rewards might be available?
Yeah, we're going to start with 20 pages of original Shinku artwork from Lee that were the pieces that I felt like were appropriate to include with this. And if people buy them up, great, we'll put up more. But if you want Lee Motor Shinku artwork, this is the place to get it. And we'll see as the campaign unfolds, we'll see if there's demand for more. Because I struggled for quite a while with, well, what should I do with Lee's pages?
Right. Yeah.
Do I just sit on them? Do I just put them in my flat file and this stack of pages, which is like this, does it just sit here until they drag me off the desk? And I decided that was not an appropriate use of the work. I decided that people who admired Lee's work and would cherish it should have it in their hands. So I have brought some pieces to conventions and sold them at a few conventions here and there. Not a great deal, but I feel like it was great to have that whole stack of Lee's work here in the house. It made me feel close to him, even though he's gone. But I felt ultimately that those pages should be in the hands of people who would appreciate it, not just hoarded in my office. So there'll be plenty of pages of artwork for people to purchase as part of the campaign. We might do some prints. We're still sort of wrestling with that notion. But for the most part, we're going to try to keep it simple. It'll be original artwork, um, maybe some prints, probably some initial some comics from my comp boxes, and then the main piece is a big hardcover with everything we can cram in it.
Yeah, this would be fantastic. And I agree. I completely understand the sentiment of feeling close to him because his artwork's there. But at the same time, somebody who's going to appreciate it, frame it, hang it up on the wall to display it. Obviously, that's very a good way to remember Lee as well. Um, Speaking of remembering, I wonder. I'm curious about this. I mean, I know you and Lee have collaborated on a lot of things over the years, as you mentioned. Do you specifically remember bringing this idea of Shinku to him? Can you talk a little bit about the project starting? Do you recall?
Mostly it was, I think it was a reaction to Twilight. I mean, this idea had been kicking around long enough that it was kind of a reaction to Twilight, which, if you're a Twilight fan, great, knock yourself out. But those were not the vampires I grew up with,
Yeah,
right? I
exactly.
grew up with Lugosi in black and white and Christopher Lee in red splattered Hammer horror films and the 1970s Dracula with Frank Langella, um, the Gary Oldman Dracula, the Coppola Dracula. Um, that's where, that's to me, the vampires are always the bad guys. They're monsters. Um, and that whole section of time where vampires were back, but they were sparkly and romantic was just not my cup of tea. So I felt like I wanted to do a story that was putting vampires back in the role of the monsters and in the role of the bad guys. Even if they were somewhat attractive and kind of cool, they were still the bad guys. So that's what this grew out of, in addition to my fascination with samurai culture and visuals and so I knew I needed somebody crazy enough to draw all that samurai armor. And Lee was the top name on the list. And we would kick around ideas all the time, and this was just one of the uh, first ones that we decided, okay, let's do this. So we actually printed I don't know, 8 or 10 page black and white version of Shinku at a local printer here that I just as sort of proof of concept.
Hmm.
And um, it ended up in the hands of Image, and within I don't know 24 hours or something like that, at a convention actually, they said, oh, we'll do this, we'll totally take this on. And the only real difference is we did a black and white book that had spot red on it. There were, the blood was going to be red and some red highlights here and there. And those black and white pages are actually in the back of the trade paperback, and they'll be in the back of the hardcover, as this was the initial concept of how the book was going to look. It was going to be black and white and red. Um, and Image really wanted a color book, because black and white books, I guess with the famous exception of Walking Dead,
Right.
uh, do not do great in the marketplace. So we decided to color it. My friend Mike Attia, who I've known since he was a teenager, and was at CrossGen with me, signed on to color it in a very sort of marker comp fashion, marker comp style that's really not quite, that didn't quite look like any other book out there right now. And which made the color process a bit longer because it's very handcrafted. Um, uh, and that's how the whole team came together. And we did our 5 issues, and I'm thrilled with how the 5 issues turned out. But there's still more of it that we want to show off to everybody, and this is the way we're going to be able to do it. Zoop. I had done a campaign with Zoop for a book called Resolution, which was a science fiction space opera, kind of Green Lantern Corps meets Unforgiven, um, with Andy Lanning as my co-writer, and Neto Diaz as the main artist on it, and who's now drawing X-Men. Um, and so we already had a relationship with Zoop, and those guys came back to me and not that long ago and said, "Hey, what else do you want to do? What else do you have that we could help you get to market?" And I felt like this was the obvious one that needed to get back out there.
Yeah, great choice, and it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to check out the new material. So I'm going to remind you, everybody out there in the audience, as I always do when we do these crowdfunded episodes, that other than joining the little community for Shinku and backing the project and getting this incredible book, the other way you can help out Ron is to share it on social media. Let your local comic shop know. Let your friends that love samurai or vampires or just comics in general know about this campaign, so they get a chance to go and check it out and enjoy it. Just take a few minutes to go over there. We understand that times are tight, and maybe you would love to be able to back it, but you just don't have the means right now, and we totally understand. But share it out there on social media. That doesn't cost you anything. And like I said, let your local comic shop know if they want to order some copies for the shop. So this is one of those ideas and one of those books where on vampires and samurais both been around for centuries. It's kind of surprising that nobody's done it before. And you and Lee did a fantastic job bringing it to life. It's just not two concepts that I would necessarily put together, but it really works for this book. So as we're winding down here, how pleased were you when you guys got going? Issue 3, 4, 5, and just really started clicking. You must have been like, yeah, we're really onto something here. Vampire and samurai. Who knew?
It just, I could hand Lee the phone book and it would look good.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
and that's really that was really the delight of it all is that when a creative team clicks and everybody's pulling on the oars in the same direction, it's like magic. And this was one of those books where it just worked, and he brought her to life and he brought her world to life. Um, we could have gone on for 50 issues telling her story. Obviously, that's not what was in the cards, but um, when you work with, this is a business where you work with your friends a lot, and where it's sometimes, you work for the big two, and it can be kind of an assembly line deal, particularly on a monthly book where art teams have to switch in and out just to keep up with the monthly grind of the deadline. And it can be a little less personal than you would like it to be, just because of the time constraints you're under. When you do a creator-owned book, you're all together. You're all pulling in the same direction. And this was certainly a case where every time I got a new page in my inbox, it was just magic. And you ask artists to draw stuff in your script and kind of have a sense of what it's going to look like in your mind, but most of the time it comes back even better than you thought. Working with Lee, there was never anything out of place. There was never anything that was awkward. The storytelling elevated the story. Everything was there visually. Um, and he didn't take any shortcuts. He didn't take, um, he didn't not draw something because it was going to be hard or time consuming. He put in the work on every panel, on every page. Um, it's just a consummate professional. Uh, we lost one of the good ones when he passed. And to me, there's a void in my life and in the lives of the friends he left behind. But I think there's a void in the business too. He was just so good at what he did, and really nobody drew like him. There are elements of a lot of different artists in Lee's style, but it was Lee's style. He had influences, but nobody really did what he did with the sense of cartooning and the sense of life that was in every figure on every page. Just a natural at what he did. And I think you hear the term artist, and Lee was absolutely one of those, because so many of the artists that I'm friends with already just adored his work because it had such life and vibrancy to it. It had such bounce to it. And that's not easy. You've either got that or you don't. And if you don't have it, it takes years and years and years to get to that point where the line you're putting down on the page has that sense of life to it. So he was, he was a rare commodity in this business.
Yeah, you mentioned cartooning earlier, and his sense of storytelling, transitions, and it's funny, it's almost meta in a way because at one point you have some other characters in the book commenting on how Shinku is a woman of very few words. There are a lot of pages in these issues, everybody in this collection, that have very little words, and it's because of Lee's storytelling. And you're smart enough to get out of the way. There doesn't need to be captions or hey describing the action. We could just see for ourselves. There's again not a lot of dialogue in a lot of these issues because it's just not needed. So if you're just hearing about Lee for the first time, Lee Moda for the first time, everybody, you need to pick this up if you're a comic fan, you're a fan of sequential art because it's fantastic. And if you are a fan, I think you want this, really nice hardcover to remember Lee and remember his work because this is just a fantastic example of what an incredible storyteller, an incredible artist that he is. So, again, best of luck with the project, Ron. I really appreciate you coming on to chat about it. And, like we said, I know how personal it is to you and how special this project is. So, as we're winding down here, any last thoughts for our audience? Anything else you want to share?
Just my appreciation for the love that people showed to Lee and showed to his work over the years when he was with us. Obviously, you never feel like you thanked people enough when they were here, right? We always do that after they're gone. But I got to see people at shows and people at signings, express their affection for what Lee did, and I think he was very often taken aback by it and maybe didn't even believe it completely. But I appreciate how much everyone appreciated Lee when he was here, and I'm very, very happy that he left behind some stuff, and there are additional projects that hopefully will get to market at some point in the future that Lee left behind because even though you guys weren't seeing it in a lot of ways, he never stopped drawing. He filled, he filled about 24 sketchbooks with just stuff. And there are other stories, other projects that there are fragments of, or in one case, there's about 50 pages of a graphic novel drawn with completely new and different characters. So he left behind a treasure trove. So I hope that Shinku coming out first will sort of pave the way for doing some more things to show off the incredible talent that Lee had.
Fantastic! What a great way to remember Lee as just an incredible artist and a great guy. So, Ron, please remind everybody where they can follow your work online. I know you have other things that are coming out. Obviously, you have your whole back catalog: Green Lantern, Silver Surfers, all the Witchblade stuff, the artifact stuff, and what have you. So, where's the best place if people want to follow along and know what you're up to?
I'm still on Twitter, which will always be Twitter, not X.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I was there first, and I'll outlast that jackass no matter what. So I'm just at Ron Marz at Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky as well, Ron Marz. My website is ronmarz.com. Those are the main places to find me. And I do a show a month or so. And you can keep up with the other job that I do, which is narrative designer on the Diablo franchise for Blizzard. When we do new releases of that stuff. So I'm well occupied most of the time.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'll put links to the Twitter and the Blue Sky as well as Ron's website in the show notes, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding them, you can just go there. Again, link in the show notes as well for the campaign. Definitely encourage you to go spend a few minutes and check it out, especially if you've never seen Lee's artwork. There's going to be some samples, some pictures of the interiors on the campaign page. Definitely, if you're a comic fan, for sure, go and check it out. It's worth your time. So, again, Ron, always great to see you, man. I look forward to chatting over the baseball season about how our respective teams are doing. It's always great to check in with you.
Thanks, man. It's always a pleasure. Opening day should be interesting because it's our guys.
Yep. Hope springs eternal for baseball fans this time of year. So, well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Really appreciate you supporting as always, and we'll talk to you next time.